I'm about to say something probably fairly radical, but it's something I feel really passionately about. You do not have to forgive someone in order to heal. In the work that I do, I encounter people, many people, that have been through things that are hard to even imagine. They are horrifying things. They have had traumas that are beyond belief. They are caused by people that, didn't care, were highly narcissistic, only cared about themselves. I've seen and heard, I always think I've seen and heard almost everything. I'm sure that's not true. I have seen and heard a lot, and I have heard stories from people whose bodies are now expressing the long-term impact of extreme traumas caused by other human beings that are now showing up in their bodies, that are now manifesting as pain and disease. Okay. I've seen it all the time. I see it every day. And one of the things that makes me extremely frustrated is that these beautiful people who, through no fault of their own, have had horrible things happen to them, feel that they're required to forgive an individual who has been abusive, who has been traumatic, who has been horrifying to them in order to actually, and at the end of the day, what that feels like to me, and what I believe it is re-victimizing that person who has already been a victim at the hands of someone that was not a good person. Forcing a victim to have to forgive things that are inherently unforgivable is actually re-traumatizing that person. Okay? There is no reason to be doing that. And I hear it so often from so many spiritual teachers and healers and even coaches and probably even therapists that you've got to forgive. No, they don't. But they do need to do some things to be able to shift that so that their bodies and minds and spirits can heal and they can thrive. Okay? So if you're watching this video, you've been put in a position of feeling that you have to forgive someone in your life for things they've done that were unforgivable, please know you're fine. You don't have to do that. Okay? What you do need to do, and I'm going to give you some tips now to be able to find your way to healing. Because when we are stuck in a situation where something really horrible has been done to us, there's a point at which we can be stuck and really connected constantly to that abuse and that trauma. And when that happens, when we are connected to how we actually feel about it, that's when pain and disease shows up. Okay. So one of the things I want you to pay attention to is whether or not in the moments where whatever it was that has happened to you happened, and perhaps in the moments where you spoke to people, maybe spoke up, or maybe didn't speak up because you weren't able to about these issues, these traumas, were you told that you were not allowed to feel how you felt in the moment, or to just quote unquote get over it, or to have a stiff upper lip and just carry on? Or did those things, those experiences that you experienced, were they minimized by other people? If that's the case and you say yes to that, then what I want to talk about is that it is important for you to be able to access the emotions that you had about the experiences that have happened to you and the emotions that you still have. So there may be a lot of different emotions. There may be grief, there may be sadness, there may be anger, there may be rage, there may be shame, there may be all kinds, a whole bucket of different things. A stew of emotions may be there. And I would suggest that it is important for you to be able to become aware of every emotion that you feel around whatever the experience was, and to be able to express it in positive ways. Now, this is where things can get stuck. If you were told that you didn't have a right to the emotions that you felt at the time, and this happens, this kind of gaslighting happens, you guys, all the time, to so many people, especially when there's issues of abuse within a family or abuse within a group, or if you were in a narcissistic company, people that are the truth tellers will oftentimes, the group will gang up on them and tell them that they're not allowed to tell the truth about a situation. I have people that I've worked with that were sexually abused by family members. And when they talked about it, not only were their experiences either denied or diminished, but fast forward 20 years and the abuser is still showing up at family events. And then they're being shamed, like they're weak, or they're just holding a grudge for not wanting to show up at family events where someone who is a sexual predator is showing up. I mean, it happens. I cannot tell you. I don't have fingers and toes enough to count the number of times I have heard that story. So it's a very common thing. If you're watching this video, it might have happened to you. And if it did, I am sorry. It should never have happened. You didn't deserve it. You don't deserve it now. And you do have the right to set boundaries. But because of that, so often you have been taught that you aren't allowed to own your feelings or even have the feelings you have about this particular thing. And so because of that, it can be so overwhelming, and we shove those emotions in. Whenever we shove emotions in and we don't allow ourselves to become aware of them and then allow ourselves to be able to feel them and express them in positive ways, that's when we start to see pain and disease manifest. It's basically an ignored emotion. Usually turns out, it comes out one way or another, and it usually shows up as pain and disease down the way. That's how people end up finding their way to me. And so while I love working with people, and if you need it, I'm happy to do it, I would rather that if you can catch it and be able to use this video to be able to express what you need to and understand where those blockages are happening, likely because of things you heard as you were growing up about the trauma or abuse, or even as an adult, if you've had abuse or trauma situations, a lot of times people will minimize your experience. And so you shove those emotions in. So step one of being able to start to heal, whether or not you actually forgive this person, is to be able to actually sit down and write out, what emotions do you still feel about this? Oftentimes, I recommend that somebody just sit down and write out a letter to their abuser or the person who traumatized them, or to whatever the situation was that happened. Literally write a letter out. You're not going to send the letter. It's really just to help you to be able to, one, get whatever you're feeling, whatever's been blocked in there, whatever's stuck in the emotional warehouse that I mean, believe me, I have had my own emotional warehouse where I deal with something and then I just duct tape the bleep out of it and throw it back in the back of my mind and, whatever. Well, of course, no matter what, and that's even knowing what I know, I still do it. It's a survival tactic that a lot of us learned in our lives. And because of that, eventually the duct tape comes flying off of one of those boxes, and now you got to confront it. And again, sometimes that's through the purview of pain and disease. Okay. So first things first, write a letter of who, whatever. Literally do not edit yourself. You have been edited enough in your experience. So you're not editing it. Nobody's going to read it except you. So write out exactly how you feel. Literally everything you would want to say if you could say it to this person. Write it all out. And then what I want you to do is take a day or two away from the letter, then come back and reread the letter. And I want you to note what emotions are standing out to you that need to be expressed. So are you seeing anger? Are you seeing rage? Are you seeing sadness or grief? A lot of times there's real grief around something that has been taken from you because of an abusive or traumatic situation, whether it's your trust in people, whether it's innocence, whether it's hope or joy. I mean, a lot of times these traumatic experiences have really taken a toll, and there's some part of you that oftentimes you might feel like you've lost. And if that's true, then I want you to pay attention to that. And then now, once you've sort of figured out what emotions you're are still there, then let's take a look at how can you do something with each emotion to express that positively and use it to be able to release this out of your body and move forward in a really positive way. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is take a look. If there is still anger there, one of the things that happens to us with anger is that people tell us a lot of times we're not allowed to be angry. But anger is actually a really positive emotion when you are aware of it and when you know kind of what to do with it. Anger only really shows up in our life when we are at a point where it's a signal that you're like, I'm not putting up with this stuff anymore. I'm done. Anger shows up for us when it's like, that's it. This doesn't continue to happen. I didn't deserve this. Okay. It's a thing that's sort of waving a flag that's like, this, your boundary was violated, your whatever was violated, and you're not putting up with it. Okay. So looking at it that way, a lot of times when I work with people, their anger actually is something where once we can look at it a little bit differently, it's actually saying like, hey, I'm done with this abusive relationship. I want out. I'm done with it. I need to get out. I need to go away from this person. I'm done with this toxic work environment, right? But the first part of figuring that out is finding a positive way to express it. So there's something that I do with my daughter, who's like 7.5 right now. And we always tell her, she's not really a particularly angry kid, but everybody gets angry about something, right? Everybody has something happen. So we'll tell her that she has some options. If she's feeling angry, she can go punch some pillows. She can go down and not lock herself, but put herself in the car and scream at the top of her lungs if she wants to, just to get that out of her body. She can throw her stuffies in her room on her bed if she wants to. And the amazing thing that happens is when I see it with her, like if she gets out that visceral feeling of anger, now she's in a place where we've cleared some of that emotional stuff. And now we can sit down and actually talk about it. And we can talk about why she's angry, what she wants to change. And that's a key thing, guys. Anger tells us that there's something we want to change that's going on. We want to shift something, right? And so that's something I want you to pay attention to. There's a desire for something to be quite different when we have anger. And so I suggest you do something similar. So a lot of times clients they'll go to a kickboxing class, they'll get in their car and scream at the top of their lungs. They will find some way. So I want you to find some positive way to get the emotions out. Again, punching pillows works, whatever it is. Just again, anger can be harmful when we make decisions on expressing anger in negative ways, like road rages and things like that. But we can express it in positive ways, like punching pillows, right? Get it out of your body. And then I want you to take a look at, what is this anger trying to tell you? And the anger may be telling you that you are upset about the situation, that you're ready to set a boundary, that you never deal with somebody like this again, right? You are ready to move forward and heal. You're sick of dealing with this and feeling this for this long period of time, okay? So that's where you can start to make some decisions about, what is this telling you and how to move forward? Let's say you're feeling sadness about the situation. Maybe you're sad over this, needless to say, the situation. You're sad over how you felt. You never got to express your own sadness. You were told to shove it in by your parents or family or coworkers, whatever the situation was. So what I often tell people is to dedicate a period of time to expressing that sadness. Now, a lot of times people will be very afraid that if they kind of let the floodgates go, they're going to get stuck in sadness. And I got to tell you that really doesn't happen. So if you're a person that's worried about that, then just set a time limit for the sadness, for a time limit that you're going to express this sadness. Now, what I recommend is you find a sad movie on Netflix or movies or whatever, and get some Kleenex, and you're going to dedicate that time to allowing yourself to express and cry and blow your nose into tissues and whatever else. You are literally using that time to get this sadness out of your body, okay? That's now, once the sadness is out, at that point you can say, you're honestly going to feel so much better right off. At that point you can say, you know what? That sadness that I was afraid of all this time, I had the right to feel sad. And because I had the right to feel sad, I'm now owning myself, my emotions, and who I am. Now, the next part of that is a little different than sad, can be grief. And the grief is usually literally a sense of loss. There's been a sense of death of something. You lost some part of yourself in this experience. Now, what I recommend for that is one of the things you notice when you go through this is that you are having a sense of grief about something. I want you to acknowledge, what are you grieving? What did you lose? What part of this? Did you lose your childhood? Did you lose whatever? They can be pretty big things that you lost. There's a lot of different things that can happen, certainly your trust in people. And so what I want you to do then is I recommend designing kind of a funeral rites, if you will, to basically acknowledge this part of you that has been lost. So I want you to think about a way that you would feel that you could express this and say goodbye. So many of us, whenever we have transitions, whenever we have things that like this, or we lose parts of ourselves, and we know this, when we lose people and animals that we love, we do a grief process. We do a funeral. There's a reason for that ritual. That ritual is there because we do need that moment in time of honoring, right? And so I suggest you do the same thing. Now, I've had people who've done all kinds of different things that were sort of a grief ritual. I had one woman who she couldn't even go past the center where her mom had been living for a while before she died. And so, and the problem was she actually had to interview for a job, and she really wanted to cross the street from it, but she couldn't even drive past it. And a lot of it was because when her mom died, she wasn't allowed to grieve, right? So in her case, I said, well, how could we design a grief ritual? And her mom loved Christmas, so she designed a ornament to her mom, and she went over and she found this beautiful tree her mom used to love to look at this assisted living facility. And she went up and she actually hung the ornament on the tree as an honor to her mom. There was a moment of like, I'm honoring this person's life, what she meant to me. Okay. So I would suggest that you do something along those lines. You can decide, was there some part of you that was lost? Maybe you lost parts of your childhood. Maybe you write a letter to that lost part of yourself, and you actually burn that letter. And as it burns, you imagine that you are releasing that part of yourself, and in so doing, also reclaiming some parts of yourself, right? And so these are the ways that I suggest that you take some time to allow yourself to go through this and be able to heal. But the thing that you don't have to do is actually come to a point of forgiveness. One of the things I notice is that once I take someone through this, we identify some of these things, I take them through this kind of a process, just allowing themselves to feel exactly as they felt in that moment in time allows them to be able to shift in such a way that now they can actually reclaim those parts of themselves. They can also cut off or release. Now, that's the final suggestion I have for you. After you kind of do that, it's really important to access the emotions first and to kind of do this kind of a process, right? And release them in a positive way. And the final thing I suggest that you do is to actually imagine that you are detaching completely from that person. Now, one thing you can do, a practice that I teach people, is actually closing your eyes and imagining yourself in a very, very safe space. And then imagining looking down and, like literally imagining you have a shield of light all the way around you and you are completely safe. And then imagining, and there's sort of two ways you can do this. If you're comfortable doing this, you can actually call that person in away from you. And you can tell that person whatever you needed to tell them, right? Whatever they did, whatever they said, whatever you wish they'd gotten. And then you can actually imagine that there's a cord between you that's still connected. And you can imagine yourself cutting that cord, right? The next thing you can do is you don't have to pull that person in. You can actually imagine that you have an angel, a spirit guide, your higher self, whatever your religion is, however you believe it, God, coming and sitting with you, and you can express everything you needed to express. And then you can imagine that angel, spirit guide, God, again, whatever your personal belief is fine with me. You can imagine that higher self actually cutting the cord for that person, and you see your energy pull back. Now, I will tell you that I was in a not great relationship in college, and it took me a long time to heal from it. One of the things I realized, even a couple years later, is that energetically, I was still somehow attached to this person, even though I really did not want to be. And once I pulled my energy back from that, I felt such a surge of energy. Now, this is something you may have to pay attention to a lot. So start to see if you feel like you're kind of energetically reconnecting. Sometimes really abusive people will actually be sort of trying to energetically connect with you. Bring your awareness to it and actually imagine that you are constantly cutting that off, or you can do it over a course of a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And imagine at night that you're just pulling your energy back and making sure that it's completely clear. I hope this was super, super duper helpful for you. If you are a person who is looking for additional healing work. Oh, and I should say, if you've been through something really traumatic, please do seek out. I love like EMDR is very effective for trauma work. There are trauma-informed counselors and therapists out there. please make sure that if you've had major trauma, if you have PTSD or complex PTSD, please get the right authority figures and the right medical team on your side to help you. So if you are, though, dealing with pain and disease that is attached to some traumas, I love to be able to help people unravel the message behind that and be able to get them on the path to healing. If that's something you're interested in having help with, I do have my body language program I'm really proud of. And then also, if you are a healer and you are interested in finding the message, or really for anybody, finding the message behind the pain and disease and being able to get to the place of healing, I have my Radical Healing for Healers masterclass. It's going to be a basically 3, almost 4-day intensive where you will get through a process and be able to understand that message and heal. So thank you so much for watching. If this has been something that's been helpful to you, please do hit the like button, subscribe. That helps me a ton to know the kind of content. If you have questions I can answer, please do post those in the comments. I'm always happy to hear from you, and share this. If you have somebody in your life who's been through something and they keep being told they have to forgive, share this with them so that we don't keep sort of punishing people with, like, re-abusing people with the idea that they have to forgive things that are really unforgivable. They don't. They can heal, they can become stronger, and they can move on. You can too. Thanks for watching. See you next time.